This is the BMW 3 Series. We've seen that already. There's a lot of chrome on the face, a lot of chrome on the window lines, which should tell you this is the luxury line. We've seen that already as well. What we haven't seen, however, is this badge, 320LD. Now this L has been a suffix that's exclusive to the 7 Series luxury saloon. That L denotes long wheelbase, or LWB. So this, in fact, is a new 3 Series. But instead of simply calling it the 3 Series long wheelbase, BMW has given it a cooler name, Gran Limousine. And so it looks stretched or elongated compared to the standard 3 Series sedan. 110 is the keyword. It's 110 millimeters longer between the wheels, and it's 110 millimeters longer on the rear door as well. BMW says that the ground clearance is exactly similar to that of the standard wheelbase 3 Series, and so are the track width and the tyre sizes. But contrary to what you would expect, the 3GL has balanced visual proportions. If anything, the additional length makes it appear grander. Speaking of grand, do you remember the Grand Tourer or the 3 GT? Now that was a 3 Series you would buy if you wanted something a little more practical, had that 4-door coupe form, a larger boot and roomier rear seats. However, this car drops those touring credentials for something that's a bit more luxury oriented. And hence the more elegant poise of the stretched sedan. But in doing that, it has the boot space and the hard-to-reach space-saver wheel as the standard 3 Series, and the usable cargo room is much lesser than the outgoing 3 GT. But in the rear seat, this has become a lot more spacious now. Of course, the new 3 Series was a lot roomier than the model it replaced, but with the long wheelbase, this one now has 43 millimeters of additional legroom. I think that is more space than even the last generation 5 Series. BMW has also made changes to the cushioning and the contouring of the seats to make them even more comfortable than the standard 3. And I wouldn't disagree to that. In fact, I had someone drive me up and down the Mumbai-Pune expressway, that's a little more than 250 kilometers, and I had absolutely no complaints about the comfort. Now, the under-thigh support on the standard 3 Series, that was a bit lacking. It's sort of fixed in this long wheelbase model, but because of the additional legroom that you get, you can nicely stretch out your feet, so that is sorted. Now, let's go nitpicking. You see, the boot space or the limited boot space that we spoke of, you can't drop the rear seats if you want additional cargo space, so that's a bit of a downer. You also can't adjust the recline angle on these seats the way you can in the 6 GT. I think that would have been a welcome addition to this particular seat. And these windows, they're nice and large, but they could have done with a window blind as well. Some of the more cheaper sedans do get it. So these are the only things that I would go nitpicking on. Oh, and well, the seat belt. Well, it's a little bit tight for my liking. It sort of digs into my neck. May not happen to everyone, but it's a bit of a concern for passengers like me. Buy this 3 Series Gran Limousine for its rear seat comfort then. And when you look at it that way, you will appreciate the airy cabin, the panoramic roof that is missed on the standard 3 Series, and the sweet Harman Kardon audio system, which is also complemented well by the new ambient lighting contours. What you'll also appreciate is the kind of supple ride quality that the 3GL has to offer over the standard variant. Even the ride comfort in the rear seat is really good despite the additional wheelbase. Now, you remember the suspension setup on the luxury line is slightly softer. The ride quality is slightly softer as compared to the M Sport variant, which is a little stiffer. Now, the LD or the LI is softer still. And I'm not complaining, because the draw of this car is pace and comfort, and razor-sharp handling isn't necessarily its thing. That said, it still feels like a BMW, and the good news is that the Gran Coupe is available in the Touter M Sport trim too, if you would like a tighter setup. While I haven't tested that variant yet, I'm amazed at just how well this luxury line tackles imperfections in the road for a BMW that isn't a crossover. It also has a fairly good noise insulation at the rear, but on concrete roads, there is a bit of booming sound that you will hear at the back. Of course, this is the ideal seat that you want to be in if you're in a BMW, but let me tell you, the rear seat is not that bad at all. In fact, it's excellent, the kind of comfort that it offers. If you were to just hand over the car to your chauffeur and get yourself a nice laid-back drive, you will be able to do that very nicely in this 3 Series. Can't think of any other car in this segment that can give you that kind of comfort and that kind of ease of use. Anyway, so the suspension components on the standard 3 Series and the long wheelbase are exactly the same. There is, however, that tuning difference that I told you about, and that also means that you do not get any adaptive dampers to firm things up if you were to drive the car around winding roads like I am right now. But what you do get is various driving modes that will sharpen up the responses of the engine and the gearbox. Now this is that amazing ZF 8-speed transmission that we've come to love in BMW cars, and it doesn't change in this car either. There's no reason for it to change anyway. In terms of the engine options, it remains the same to the standard 3 Series. What we are driving is the 320Ld, the badge that we opened with. So this gets the 2-liter diesel engine. And like we've said in the past, it is one nice sprightly motor that's also fuel efficient for city as well as highway use. And when you're in the mood, the engine doesn't leave any room for complaint. In fact, since we are talking about driving in the mood, 0 to 100 is marginally slower. Okay, let's not say marginally slower, about a second slower as compared to the standard 3 Series. And in our test, it's gone from 0 to 100 in about 7.7 seconds. If I were to compare the fuel economy figures of the long wheelbase to the standard 320D, they're marginally on the lower side. That said, the 320D that we had tested in the past was the BS4. We've typically seen across a lot of models and engines that in the BS6 tune, they have gone a little lower on the fuel efficiency, and that difference in the figures, given the additional weight, the additional length of this car, is actually not something that needs a mention. Though I did mention it for those of you who care about fuel efficiency. Let's sum this up then. Now, BMW has gone on record and said that they are not going to build a GT variant on the new 3 Series platform. So if you have been waiting for a new GT to come out, well, it's not happening, at least in the 3 Series lineup. But if you were primarily looking for that particular variant purely for the additional space at the rear, then of course this is the model to go for. There are no two questions about it. The kind of comfort it offers you in the rear seat is phenomenal. And I did make a few mentions, or I did go nitpicking and say that, you know, it could have done with window blinds, it could have done with a few more features at the back just to pamper the rear seat occupants, because that is the main draw of this vehicle, right? But at the same time, we also need to understand the fact or acknowledge the fact that they couldn't have just thrown the kitchen sink at this car, because if they did, if they really made that rear seat so much more opulent, that would also mean that it would reflect on the price tag and it would take it freakishly close to the 5 Series, and that would just beat the point of this car. People would just stretch a little bit more and get themselves the 5 Series, because that is again an iconic sedan in itself, just the way the regular 3 Series is. So to make a case for itself, I think everything that BMW's planned for this particular car and whatever they've given this car, I think it all makes sense. It ticks all the right boxes, and it's all made from all the customer feedback that BMW has received in India. So I think they do have a winner on their hands, because there are a lot of people who will choose this for its practicality over the standard sedan. I also see a lot of people from the fleet segment going in for this car, for the chauffeur-driven clientele. This makes a lot of sense again. And finally, I think one car or one segment that is certainly going to feel the brunt of it are those practical luxury sedans like the Superb and the Passat. They've always been the practical choice. They've always been the more sensible choice when it comes to choosing them over the cars like the 3 Series, A4, C-Class, etc. And now with this additional space, with this long wheelbase, with these additional features, I think here's a car that is big on the badge, big on the space, big on the practicality, and, well, a great buy in itself.